This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joie.
Brought to you by Mint Mobile. Stay tuned for a special offer at the end of the show. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joie, and today is Friday, June 16th, 2023. And my guest is the impeccable, awesome, amazing Nirav Gondia. Hi, Nirav. How are you today?
Hello, darling. I am having a mare, which is always life, but otherwise life is groovy, and I cannot complain.
Yes. You were telling me earlier you're having quite the day, so hopefully it gets a little better. But I think what the topics of today are going to cheer you up. We've got a bunch of stuff here that is going to make you happy. You wrote an excellent unboxing story. Like, I didn't even think you could write an unboxing story, but you pulled it off. You wrote a great story about the Razr Plus, and we're going to talk about that because we can't give you reviews yet, folks. But, you know, you read my hands-on hot hardware by now, like we talked about that a couple of weeks ago. But this week, they let us unbox them publicly. And so Nirav actually wrote a story about that, which I think is really cool. So there's that. And then there's, of course, the new MacBook Air 15 that's out there. Let's get some reviews. I reviewed the OnePlus Nord N30 5G, which is a mixed bag. So these are kind of the things we're going to talk about. There's some other things as well, right, Nirav?
Yeah, I mean, I think our list is interesting. And the best way to kind of lead into it is this is going to be a very fun summer for tech.
Oh my God. It's
such
gonna be
a fun
insane.
summer.
I can't remember a recent year, even pre-COVID, it wasn't this busy. I don't know what's going on. Or maybe I forgot. What do you think?
No, you know what it is? We, at the beginning, and I'm just paying attention to focus peaks there. You know, at the beginning, like pre-COVID, everyone conformed. We had fixed windows. Now, what COVID had done, and you know, the fixed windows were great. We could all take July off and not have to worry. You could pretty much guarantee you had time in June to do stuff that you want to prep for the rest of the year and build and all of that stuff. COVID meant everyone's like, oh, we can just do it whenever. And technically COVID is, well, it's still here, but you know, the WHO no longer rules it as a pandemic. So now that COVID is over, for lack of any other way to put it, everyone's gone like, nah, we still want to just, you know, make things the way they are, to the point where I think we can pretty much guarantee for 10 months a year, we are flat out.
It seems flat out. Like, I'm like looking at it going like, wait a minute. Like, I just reviewed the Nord. I've got 1 week left to review, you know, the Razr Plus. Then we're going to be getting the Nothing Phone 2. Then we're going to be getting, you know, the some of us, lucky few, are going to get the Pixel Fold. Then, of course, you know, it's Samsung time. I mean, it's just, oh my God, it's a nightmare. But look, I can't
I'm
complain.
super excited.
Like, I don't want the audience to
foldables.
feel like there's two of us here with lots of access and privilege bitching because we can't make it work. So
in some ways it's better. In some, we used to have 6 phones over 2-week period.
Yeah.
And it was brutal. It was like backbreakingly brutal. And again,
It's
this is very
now,
much
right?
a first
Like,
world,
it's
first world
busy,
problem, because we're not
it's
actually
steady.
breaking backs. So yeah, it's busy but steady. That's the best way to put it. So at least there's always something to review, and there's always something to do, and there's always something we're talking about.
Exactly. So let's start with the Moto Razr unboxing, because look, I didn't feel necessary to make I've got an unboxing video coming up, folks. You know, I'm always behind on my edits, but I didn't feel it necessary to write a story. And because
3,000 words
I
of
know.
the story
So
as well.
What can we talk about, first of all? There are rules here.
I know this, and I've clarified this like 50 times. Anyone reading my unboxing may think it's a review, because I think I've done borderline. But they said you're allowed to talk about your impressions. You're not allowed to do comparisons. You're not allowed to go detailed analysis. And to be fair, half of that unboxing is just being copied straight into my review anyway. I wrote it in that way on purpose.
Right, yeah.
Because it's like half the job done. And I think we can give it, this is now day 6 kind of ish for me. And all I'm going to say is this thing is bloody bonkers.
Yeah.
Bloody bonkers.
So it's like,
there's like I could have probably written 7,000 words. Yes, Miriam, you're not allowed to show your red one. And I may have tweeted that I'm incredibly disappointed at not getting.
What do you mean
one,
I'm not
but,
allowed to show my red
spoiled.
one?
I'm joking.
They weren't telling me that. Look, I think I want to kind of touch on some of the. I feel the same way as you. First of all, 4 days for me because I got it a couple of days after you guys because I was in Vancouver and I had it sent to San Francisco and I had to come back to get it. But I'm very impressed with this phone. And before we, I tell you what I think, I'd love to hear. Give us 5 things. I mean, first of all, your story will be linked in the show notes so people can look at it. But I want from the horse's mouth, what are the 5 things, the top 5 things right now that are really making you feel like this is a better phone than the Flip from Samsung?
All right. Basically, all of them come into just this thing we can see here. This absolutely gorgeous, lovely thing, the front display. And the 5 things are all in that. The big thing is, and I've shot with the Oppo Find N2 Flip. I have one here. I have a Vivo X Flip here. I've got all the Samsungs. I feel like I have a very good reference point for foldables at this point.
I think all of us who are reviewing these know our stuff. I don't have the Vivo, but I have the Oppo. I have the Samsung.
So the thing that makes it interesting is it's the first real big, wide, horizontal form factor screen. And it's amazing. There's so much more you can do with it. I posted a video, just a random short. I was in a hospital waiting room yesterday before a session.
And you played all the games.
And I was just gaming.
Yeah.
I could have done anything else.
It's the first time in a while that I've actually played games while waiting on my phone because that front display, folks, has a bunch of games that it comes with, and they're very compelling.
I'm going to go a step further, though. It's not just the games. The games make it I'm okay. Yesterday, I used this phone for about 6 to 7 hours, and we'll dig into some of the specifics in a second. My screen on time was only listed at 1 hour 58. And the reason being, the other 5 hours or so was on the front display. I type, I do all my emails from it. I will genuinely, and the other day I sent a 900-word tweet that I literally bashed out on the Razr. Now, you can't see quite all the formatting, and it takes a little getting used to. But there is nothing that, there's a reason people love BlackBerry because it was just easy and effortless. To me, this is easy and effortless. And what this makes this super interesting on top, yes, Gboard is fine, and I was kind of pissed I had to switch from SwiftKey and all of that. The voice typing. Suddenly, this is the perfect thing to just send voice messages like this and to have conversations like this. And I love my iPhone 13 mini, apart from things like battery life and stuff like that. This is an iPhone 13 mini or a really big smartwatch or the early tablets, or my favorite way to put it, a more advanced pager meets a smartphone. And the reality is, I said this on Twitter, yesterday, I think, and I was like, someone was like, oh, but I think I'd prefer the Flip, etc. I was like, all the Flips that came before are not a reference point for this. The only people who can truly talk about the experience of the Razr are people who are reviewing the Razr. Not a single other phone comes close.
I agree with that. I feel like, I want to add my 2 cents here. So I think there are 2 types of people, even within our group of reviewers, right? You know those from our conversations, right, that we've been having. It's a PR nightmare because we all talk to each other, of course. But just for those of you who are PR people listening, this is not something you can avoid, okay? But here's the thing. I think that some people are stuck on the idea that the front screen should just be really just notification and time and basically a very basic smartwatch. Those Chinese smartwatches that last 2 weeks on a charge that have very basic functionality, right? But some of us, like you and me, feel like the ability to run apps fully on the front screen is what makes this phone. And what makes the form factor, the Flip form factor, not just the Razr Plus, it's the form factor. But here's the thing that's brilliant. And this is where I've got to give Lenovo and Moto like super kudos, is they did both. They have another phone coming that is basically the same as the status quo, but cheaper. So it's not status quo because it's affordable. But at the same time,
It's
for
the
those
Flip
of us,
4 and others, but
exactly,
done Motorola style.
for those of us who want to have a different experience, this is it. And I think they nailed it. I really truly believe they nailed it. And I think Samsung's not going to do the same thing, at least not to the same extent. And they're going to shoot themselves in the foot with it. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong.
No,
maybe
this
I'm
year,
wrong.
It's in the last two paragraphs of that 3,000 words. It is the first time in over 10 years. And Moto, I love you. We all love talking about G and Edge, and it's fine. We'll continue to cover them. We'll give them their just dues. This is the first time that Moto has challenged Samsung since Samsung became the de facto leader. They have never come close. And
I
so
agree.
The crazy thing about, so going back to the Razr, one thing I forgot to mention, that front display, it just opens up these worlds of opportunities. I remember the original Flip. I would run around and I'd be using it to take those, you have this tiny little slivers. You're like, oh, let me try and take a picture, and it would come out half your head's chopped off because it's shitty and all of that stuff. The reality is this weekend at my past weekend at my best friend's wedding.
Yeah.
I delayed going to SF I took a later flight because this was coming out for delivery on Friday, and I wanted it for this wedding. And I can promise you it was worth every minute. I've had a bunch of people go, oh, well, the camera is not that good. And it depends what you care. And I really want to make this point. If you are looking at the rear camera, fine. The rear camera on it in and of itself, if you're using it compared to any regular phone, it's good enough in many cases, yeah?
I still think it's upper mid-range worthy. It's not like... It's better than the Moto Gs. It's better than the Moto Edges.
I wish I could show you some of my pictures that I'm looking at Google Photos right now because I have them randomly open on this computer. But I agree with you. But what makes this spectacular and everyone's forgotten is it doesn't matter about what they're like shooting backwards, because that's fine that it's upper mid-range. I dare you to find a better selfie camera or selfie experience on any other phone right now. Because having taken this in darkness, in a party bus, in all sorts of stuff, the time you want to shoot all of this is a wedding. That's where you want memories. And I would happily take this to another wedding. Not because the photos are technically perfect, but, there is a lot of, without OIS in the ultra wide angle, it can be hard when you're taking group selfies. But the reality is, you take this versus an iPhone versus a Samsung phone for selfies in low light, the Moto's gonna just piss all over everything else, mind my language. And the reason is simple. It has much better sensors because you need to compare it apples to apples. And if you love taking selfies, there is no better phone for it right now.
I agree. And I just go simpler than this. There's a simpler answer for the audience here. Those of you who are watching this on Patreon are seeing me and Nirav brandish our beautiful devices. But I think the thing that I want to impress upon the audience here is that the specs are solid. The only thing missing from this camera system is a large pixel array that bins down, right? Like a 50 or 48 megapixel setup.
Like they're doing with the smaller Razr.
But to compensate for that, they've given us f over 1.5 and 1.4 micron pixels. Now, those of you who have been following along at home for a while now, remember that the iPhone 13 and 12 had a 12 megapixel sensor with 1.4 microns and OIS. And of course, the Razr Plus has OIS. And it didn't even have an f over 1.5 lens, and it was doing just fine. So how quickly we forget that we don't need 50 megapixels or 48 megapixels. The thing that's holding this phone back is not the tech specs on the cameras. It's Moto's image processing, which has improved leaps and bounds in the last year, but is still not up to the best. And I'm saying this having reviewed the Moto Edge Plus as well. A lot of people felt the cameras were a little weak on that, But again, I feel like people are unrealistic. Like they think that every phone should behave like an iPhone or a Samsung S series or a Pixel, and those are the exceptions. Like you're gonna say, well, what about the Huawei phone and the Vivo X series and like all like the Find series, the Find X series from Oppo? Those again are outliers. Those are the phones that are camera phones. They're camera centric. The only three phones that are not camera phones that are really good at photography right now are the regular S series, not the Pro, right? Or Ultra, like the S23, 23 Plus, and then the Pixel series, and then the iPhones, right? And so if you have expectations that every flagship's going to be that good, that's not a camera-centric flagship. This phone is not a camera-centric phone. It is a flip-centric phone. It's a front display-centric phone. And as such, the camera system is freaking awesome for what it is, in my opinion.
Yeah, 100%. This is, I'll be honest, I'm sitting there smiling if you're watching this on Patreon, because I just was also scrolling through some of the photos I took of the week. Because I'll give you the kind of the skinny. Listen, now I've looked at these on a computer in more detail. Yes, there are blurs, there are image processing things that are very like, okay, could be better. But I'm still looking at this going, the big thing, and I did write about this, the big thing is, you remember when, I don't know if there's a phone that comes close to doing this. Years ago, when you would take a selfie before it became ubiquitous, before everyone and their dog was taking a selfie, you take one and people would be like, oh, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to jump in, I'm going to jump in. And you'd grow to more people in a group, especially if you're in a group setting. That's what happens with this. Because it's not an average phone, and because you've got the funky animations on the front screen if you're shooting a subject and not using it in selfie mode, or you've got this small thing out and everyone's like, what the hell is that? The amount of people that will consistently jump into a photo because they don't know what's going on, but they're like, oh, I need to. Just like when you see someone with a ring light in Asia. You see someone with a ring light in Asia taking doing a selfie, whatever, people are going to jump in. That's the kind of, the philosophy for it. So I think there's it makes it fun, and it makes people want to be part of that experience. And I think that's the same reason they went for Cirque du Soleil at their event. It's not a techie's phone.
So, the other thing you think people forget is, in the same way as you just described, using this at the wedding, people get like excited about it. They're surprised by it. Of course, that's going to wear out eventually, right? There's going to be more flip phones out there. But the other thing that I think that's super critical is you have an ultra wide. So, those super big group shots, you switch cameras and all of a sudden, boom, right?
Well, this is where I'm not a massive, this is the one part. I did a lot of ultra wides over the weekend. Yeah.
It's not as good, right? The sensor's not as good.
The sensor's not as good. The lack of OIS is particularly the worst part. And I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
There is so much shakiness when you're trying to hold it up like, like this claw shape. And then if you're right-handed, and there's more righties than lefties in the world.
Right.
The default is to hold it like this and take selfies like that. And when you do that, part of your palm is actually covering the camera.
Yeah.
That said, I do it all over again because you can edit, you can tweak, but it's still just so much fun. And so much still comes out better than your average smartphone front-facing camera.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is still worth mentioning that, this is not the end-all be-all. There's going to be other flip phones in the future that are probably just as good. The reality, though, is having multiple lenses in the back of the phone that become your front lenses, your selfie lenses, is an advantage. And I think that's what I'm trying to get to, right? Like, it might not be an advantage on this phone because of the limitations of the sensor, but overall, the idea is sound, right?
Oh, it's definitely an advantage.
Yeah.
This is the way forward. And I think the biggest test of the Razr's long-term potential is specifically the cameras on the Flip 5. Because it doesn't, from my experience, it doesn't hit where, it's not as good as the Find N2 flip cameras.
Yeah, so far that's the best one I've used on a full flip phone.
The Vivo is kind of cool, but I think the Vivo is this cross between all of these experiences, and I only haven't spent enough time with it. But we know, I have a strong suspicion that Motorola has absolutely nailed the front experience better than anybody else will anytime soon. So now the real test is, well, what can Samsung do with the cameras?
But also, what can Samsung do with the price? Because they have a choice, right? They are a deep-pocketed company. They could come out with like $799 or $899 on theirs with a big screen in the front. Now, granted, it can't run full apps, but if the camera's better, the battery life's better, they have a Snapdragon 8 Gen 2, or maybe they'll surprise us with an 8 Plus Gen 2, right? Like that could still come out before the announcement in July.
Well, I don't think Qualcomm's actually going to do plus generations anymore.
But maybe not. The point is, though, that it's going to have a better chip. It's going to have better cameras. It might have better battery life because they might have learned from Oppo, who has still the best battery life. But if they can come in with better camera, better battery life, better processor, better cameras at a slightly lower price point, they're kind of cutting the middle between, the Razr Plus at $999 and whatever the price is going to be for the regular Razr 2023, which I still think is going to be much more affordable than we think. And so the other thing is
$699, $599 range.
We
probably
are on team front big screen, right? You and I, for those flip phones.
100%.
But I still think there's a huge amount of people who are not going to care. They just want to see the caller ID, the time, and their notifications, and maybe a widget to play their music. I do truly believe that there is room for a flip phone with a smaller screen and widgets for some people. And if you want to save money that way, why not? So I think the true test of this is going to be how much people end up using the front screen. I personally think it's the best thing since sliced bread. You're on board too, but I'm not convinced. That's the thing. We're nerds. I'm not convinced that the nerds out there are going to move away from their S23 Ultra Candy bars, and I'm not convinced that they're going to jump to a flip with a big front screen, right? Because then there's other compromises, battery life, cameras, all that other stuff. So it's really a gamble that Moto's taking in a way. They're delivering something that we want, right? But is that what the world wants? And the world is not always right. Apple's proven us time and time again that sometimes you just have to make the product and then people, will get it, right? Who knows what's going to happen with Apple Vision Pro, right? That could be also, go both ways. So I think that I'm happy with the product as it is, but I don't know for sure if it's going to be a profitable and successful endeavor.
All right. Profitable and successful? Difficult to say. Profitable? Who knows? Lenovo has deep enough pockets, not as deep as Samsung, but deep enough that if they really want to, you can see we'll see a serious battle in the marketplace. Yeah. I mean, you look at the AT&T deal, that says much about the positioning for Moto and how they were approaching things. So that I get and agree with. The part that for me I think it's going to be successful. All the years in retail will tell me that this phone is the pictures make you go, ooh, the little videos that, the gaming, like the one that I did and everyone else's shorts are going to make people go, ooh, I need to see that. And as soon as you see it in person, you will be enamored with most people will be enamored with the experience. And then in my perspective, if I was there selling this, it'd be like, oh, cool. Yeah. And then this is 100% the phone I would show everybody.
Right. Absolutely. 100%.
And then if they're like, oh, this is too expensive, it's this, we see what promos you
Well,
have.
they're great deals right now, so that's not a problem really, right?
So
but I think there's one feature that might flip people, pardon the joke here, flip people over to the more expensive Razr, the Plus. And that's the fact that even though they might not care about using apps on the front like you and I do, they might care about having a bigger viewfinder. And that, I think, is the killer app, right? For the average person versus this cheap one. But I have a hunch that worldwide, globally for Moto and Lenovo, the smaller one's going to be the success because of the price. Because in our markets, we're not price sensitive because everything is subsidized by the carriers and we have trade-in deals. So I think in the West, I think the Razr Plus is going to be very successful. But I think
in the US and Canada, yes.
Latin America, other markets where Moto is really strong, for the first time, those customers are going to have the option to buy a brand new flip phone that's not secondhand, right? And then the other thing we need to talk about, the elephant in the room, right? I've seen this happen with Theo, who's using a Z Flip 3. It's the durability, right? We're actually, part of the reason my time is a little tight today is because, we're going to the Samsung Experience Store to get a new screen protector getting applied this afternoon. You had to make an appointment for that. And it's kind of insane to me that they got their phone just before the Z Flip 4 launched last year. And I know bad timing, but we got a great deal. $150 for the phone, really. Like, unlocked.
And a good phone for it.
Not even a carrier deal, right? And they're in a year of use, their screen is delaminating, like their screen protector. That is, and they're relatively gentle. So I'm imagining the average person, the way they treat their phone today. I really hope that Moto's durability is at least as good as Samsung's going forward. Because honestly, this having to replace your screen protector once a year is BS.
So let's talk OG Razr for a second, because this is a good reference point. No. The story being, when that came to me about a week before all reviewers, because I bought it, I'm the one who broke the fact that the screen had issues.
You're the one who broke it.
Yeah, it was DOA thanks to me. So I will say I have been doing, within the realms of I'm not breaking your phones, Moto. Love you all, don't worry. But I've been exploring whether I think there's any actual durability concerns here. I don't. It feels just as stable. The real question, like you say, is the longevity of the display.
It feels as good as Samsung. But again, you will need a new screen protector in a year. The average person, and that is not good. We need to find a solution to this problem. This is a problem. Theo for the last week waiting for this. It's been almost a month since their screen started delaminating. We haven't gotten around to making an appointment because in Canada, they're all sold out on the screen protector at the Experience Store. And the only place you can go is the Samsung Experience Store. So we had to come to San Francisco to do it. And for the last 3 weeks, they're like, I hope my screen doesn't die. Because you can literally start seeing the dust coming in through the sides and the crease, accumulating underneath the screen protector as it's delaminating. Every time they shut the phone, you can hear it go click because the screen protector is ticking away from the actual display. It's harrowing. You're worried you're going to destroy your phone every time you use it. It's not good.
The real question for me as well is going to also be where is, when, for Moto, when shit hits the fan, where does people go?
Exactly.
Samsung has this amazing relationship with iFixit.
And they have retail stores,
they have
not as
some
many.
Experience stores, yeah. They have a lot. And Moto, that's the bit that I'm not sure about.
And when I called them to make the appointment, right? I called basically the store directly because online it's it just, takes, I tried their online process and it was really not. I have to say, Samsung's online concierge for the Fold and Flip is not great. You really just have to call an Experience Store and get things settled. But here's the thing that I found out doing this is that some places don't have screen protectors in stock. Some places don't have appointments right away. You have to wait 2-3 weeks. Can you imagine how long it'll, this is Samsung. Okay, so what's Moto going to do? Oh, Samsung, the best solution they gave me when I did it online was ship it, send it in. We'll pay for shipping and everything. What do you do without your phone and it's a week? What do you do without your phone for a week? Are you nuts? No, this is something where you should be able to walk into any repair shop and just on the spot, they do it. And that's not
it's also, it's also that joy of, without being negative, how many people have sent something to Samsung and been through the ringer?
Oh, 100%. That's another problem. But at least you have to say, I've noticed that as soon as you say Flip or Fold to the rep, they have a different kind of tier of support. They immediately crank it up a notch, right?
I'd be very interested to see what happens with the, with the Samsung Premium Care and all of that stuff, whether that changes things. But yeah, as soon as you say I spent $1,800, people go, oh, okay, yeah, we'll give you a little bit better.
But I think like Moto's in a pickle because the only choice they have right now is you ship in the phone for a week and it gets fixed somewhere, right? That is not a solution for the average person. Like the average person, especially think about it, the average person with an eSIM nowadays, like, come on, that is not going to be a solution.
I wonder if they're relying on the carriers and then Assurian, and they're taking the same, the same partnership, the Assurians of the world, but deciding to try and route through the carrier to build up those carrier relationships, etc., yada, yada, yada. Because if they do have to change a phone at all, it's going to have to come from the carriers if you bought it from the carriers, because it will cause giant mismatch on their system and all of that stuff.
I think they're going to be doing what Apple does a lot of the time, which is just replace it. Just give you a new one.
That is a strong sense, like that.
And then refurbish
like the
them,
right way.
like,
Yeah.
And then sell them refurbished. Because look, I don't think this is a viable solution right now. Like I'm seeing what Theo's going through. Now it's not their main phone. They have an iPhone as well, so they're okay. But it's just like, come on. Like, and I'm not trying to be negative about this because I love the flip form factor and I love the fold form factor too. But I think that we have a product here with at the cusp of finally breaking through, right? In the same way as the Z Fold 3 and Z Fold 4 were really changed the game. I've seen some in the wild, which is crazy. There's so many phones I have never seen in the wild. And honestly, the only folds I've ever seen in the wild were owned by us, the media and the tech-savvy folk. But I've seen flips in the hands of the average person out there.
So what's crazy is I've seen folds. I've seen a lot of folds, especially on freeway services. Big truckers love the fold.
Yeah.
It's perfect because a lot of trucks don't require active monitoring in many ways. There are a lot of ways that trucks can be a easy enough drive. And we all know that most people don't follow the rules of the road, not just truckers, but generally human beings don't. But you're stuck in you can't drive for 12 hours on the middle and you're stuck in your cab. You absolutely want the biggest screen you can get and all of that stuff. So I've seen it with business people and I've not seen it but I've also seen regular human beings go, this works for me. Has it taken off? It's definitely improved and you're seeing a lot more foldables as a whole in the wild. But the next 18 months feels like absolutely crucial. It feels crucial for all the companies included, Samsung included, because if they don't truly innovate other than a big screen and they don't have the experiential part of this year, their back's against the wall next year, in my opinion.
Yeah. I still feel, and I had this conversation on Twitter recently, not a conversation, it was me responding to John Gruber of Daring Fireball, who was basically quoting, David Pierce at The Verge wrote a very favorable article about the flip phone, and I agree with David. And John Gruber made fun of it on Daring Fireball. And I responded to John on Twitter and said, dude, like you've never even used one of those for more than a minute. So like I'm assuming, but I'm pretty sure, I'm confident, like he's used Pixels. He uses Android. He always has a Pixel floating around, but I don't think he spent any significant time with a flip phone. And as such, you can't judge. But I think until Apple, and this is my point in the tweet, until Apple makes a flip phone, I don't think it's going to take off because of these things that I'm telling you about right now. These constraints around durability are a real problem. Like,
all right, I want to add a few bits in there.
If you can walk into an Apple store, which you can, right? If you can walk into an Apple store, which is everywhere, and get that screen protector replaced on the spot for free, that's when this durability issue becomes a non-issue. And then that the other ones are going to be in trouble because they don't have the stores.
On durability, I agree. I will say that John Gruber was more than 100% wrong in that article. And I actually lost a little respect reading that because I was like, this is an abomination of an editorial. It is so biased and so factually incorrect around the foldable experience. I tweeted, I was like, there is zero chance he knows anything about foldables. And it makes me question how much he actually knows. That's not exactly accurate, but I was really pissed off when I read that because I was like, Apple needs to get into that space. But I'll tell you what, I'm not eagerly clamoring for them to do so. And I'll tell you why. I don't think it's going to be a great experience. I don't think with the way iOS is set up, with certain screen sizes, with certain ratios and form factors, and everything Apple has shown us around software features on mobile devices, nothing says to me, oh my God, I can't wait. The only thing I can see them doing is taking an iPhone, folding it, and on the front, just making a bigger dynamic island and just using the same live activities.
But that's my point. That's exactly what they will do.
But that's not enough to go, wow.
But you underestimate the ecosystem. Here's the thing, right? I know a lot of iPhone users, including Theo, who have switched to the Samsung Z Flip because they wanted to try it. And their experience has been negative because of One UI and Android. I am sorry. And the lack of iMessage and the lack of ecosystem integration in general. Now, you and I can get over that because we're Android users, right? But I can totally understand how an iPhone user would be like, I want this idea of a makeup compact in my pocket that opens up and gives me the real estate of an iPhone 14 Pro Max. I get that that's something they want.
Let me ask you a question.
But Apple could deliver that, and Apple is not delivering that. And that's why it's a problem.
Yeah. The real thing to remember, does Apple need to? Because I'll tell you now, if you look at I would not be surprised if they don't really go down the folding iPhone approach. Because they're like, we've got different size iPhones. It's fine. It's our cash cow. Yeah?
Yeah.
Will they do a folding iPad? Almost certainly that makes sense for them. You know, I have a friggin' iPhone and an Apple Watch and I'm using a Mac and we have everything. But I'll tell you that I'm not clamoring for them to do it because I think they'll screw up the software. They'll do great in durability and support and all of that. That makes that is questionable. But there is no way they're going to make something even half as polished as, say, a Fold 5 or a Fold 4. They are so far behind. And then you look at Vision Pro and it makes me realize they probably don't care about the folding industry. When you are the monopoly around your platform and you have the ecosystem tie-in, do you want to get people, like genuinely, if I was Tim Cook, would I be like, can build a folding phone? That's going to means that it will just strengthen a little bit of our phone ecosystem. But the people buying an iPhone are probably going to buy an iPhone. People buying we might have a bit across, but it's fine. Or we go and build an entirely separate generational technology kind of approach, like the iPhone was, like the Mac mouse was, like the iPad was, now like Vision Pro is. And what it can do is it gives people more reasons to spend more money in our ecosystem. If you're Tim Cook, it's the latter. So their folding iPhone might be happening, their folding iPad might be happening, but it definitely isn't a priority compared to Vision Pro or any other next generation thing they're trying to do.
I agree with you. I agree. We should switch to the other stuff we need to talk about.
50 minutes in, it always happens.
I think this is a good way to end on this. We have talked at length about not just the Razr Plus, but a good conversation on kind of the state of the flip folding phone. I have a phone that I played with this week, not nearly as glamorous as the Razr Plus that we're all enjoying, and that is the OnePlus Nord N30 5G. It's something. Last year's N20 5G had a lot of style and premium look and feel to it, and it delivered a well-rounded experience for $279 or something, right? A lot of us, if I talk to everyone, we really enjoyed that phone, right? Yet, here we are, and they come out with a new Nord, like to replace it, and it's a step back in many ways. And I'm not quite sure how they did that. I'll tell you why. First, because the design doesn't look and feel as premium, which is kind of like, how can you miss on that when you got it right the first time? More importantly, I want to note that this is the same phone as the OnePlus Nord CE3 Lite in Europe. So they're the same. But, part spinning is a thing. BBK Group does it. Xiaomi Group does it. I'm not worried about that. What I'm worried about is that the one thing that made that phone super cool in Europe was one of the colorways that they had, which was this crazy lime color. And they didn't bring that colorway to the US. So instead, we've got this really drab, gray, generic Moto G looking phone that now doesn't have that premium vibe and that look and feel from last year. And processor is the same as last year, 695. Nothing wrong with that, but it's not very exciting. Then they detuned the screen from an OLED to an LCD. IPS, mind you, 120 hertz instead of 60. But I'll take an OLED at 60 over an IPS at 120 any day. So I don't understand what they were thinking. Because of that, there's no in-display fingerprint sensor. It's on the power lock key. It just feels like a cheaper phone. Yet it's more money, $299. Granted, it's $264 on Tmall, but whatever. The point is, the only thing this thing has going for it is a 108 megapixel camera. So they've upgraded the camera to a bigger, better sensor. It's a Samsung HM6. It's a decent sensor. They didn't put OIS on it. So now, it has native 3x lossless zoom, where it crops the center, kind of like the iPhone does with a 2x zoom and like the Pixel 7 Pro does with a 2x zoom. So this is a cool feature, but you can't use it because you're shaking so much that your pictures end up being half the time blurry. Now, I know how to brace myself, so I know how to do it. And if you look at my photos, they look great. But the average person who doesn't know how to take a picture and just mashes the button is going to get a bad experience. Same in low light. So I don't understand what they were thinking. Is it a bad phone? Absolutely not. It's a decent phone all around. The value is still there. It's got 50-watt charging. It's got a massive battery. It'll run 2 days on a charge if you're not too crazy with it. There's a lot of pluses. Performance is good. They finally got Oxygen OS to run properly now, and it's smooth. Last year, that wasn't the case. So there's but the thing is, I wanted OnePlus to push ahead. I wanted the same premium design, and then I wanted them to keep the OLED and then add that camera feature and do it right by putting OIS. Instead, they just grabbed parts from the bin and randomly made a phone. Bad. Sad.
How does, at $299 though, how does it compare to a Moto G?
It's better, in my opinion.
So this is the thing. We want OIS. We're fortunate, but average Joe at that point, at that price point, probably cares less.
I know, but
Genuinely.
last year they broke the mold, and this year they pulled back, and that's kind of why I'm saying, yeah. You surprised us and impressed us last year. There are a few corners that needed to be polished. Instead, you unpolished some corners and polished others, but you didn't, it's not incremental. It's a step sideways, not a step forward.
So the real question is how much extra was, and this is the reality. What was the impact on the BOM cost of going 108 megapixel versus the 64, and how did that impact? And all of the nonsense that we cover.
Sure. But here's the thing you have to keep in mind.
They should have bought the color. The colorway, I've looked at it now.
Exactly.
It looks
that would have
stunning.
been good, right? That would have saved the design. Exactly.
Was it up to them? Because it feels like carrier partners are probably the ones going, no, or they're going, we just need drab and gray and whatever.
But the carrier partner's T-Mobile, so they're pretty funky. They would have at least done a magenta version or something, I don't know. Look, the other thing you have to understand is, and this is contextual, this is why I review the phones from China all the time. This is essentially a Realme 10 Pro from last year. Spec-wise, it's almost the same. So this is what I'm talking about, part spinning, right? They, even with the Nord version that has a cool color in Europe, they didn't try hard because they just pulled a very price competitive phone from last year out of their roster, changed it around a little bit cosmetically, and boom, there it is. And that's what I'm there's no effort here. We've seen them make an effort last year with the N25G. We see them make an effort with the 11 5G, the flagship this year was really solid, right? Other than wireless charging, we all loved it. But then they pull this. I'm it feels like to me that they're ADD at OnePlus. They can't keep their storyline straight.
They're playing the Samsung playbook properly. They're doing what Samsung does, and what everyone does. When you buy all of these parts, you're like, cool, how many ways can we spin this? This is, etc. So, but yeah.
It's unfortunate. Look, you read my review on Hot Hardware. I'll put the link in the show notes.
I just read it, and I'll say the word that comes to mind is meh.
Yeah,
genuinely,
it's very meh. And it's disappointing to me because look, I feel like there's no storyline here with OnePlus. It's like we get random products that are great and then random products that are not great. There's no consistency. And this is what, like, there used to be consistency, you know? And it's like, how can the product planners there not get this right? And that's kind of what is disappointing to me. And that's all I'm going to say about that. Let's talk about the MacBook Air 15 briefly. The reviews are out and it's exactly what we all wanted. The reviews are amazing, like 9 out of 10s.
Just got mine.
9.5 out of 10. It's just chef's kiss, isn't it?
Yep, I've got mine. And after 3 hours, I'm like, mwah, this is just spectacular.
You know, I really don't think I can add more to that. I will link to the Verge's review here because it's great. And, you know, I'm a big MacBook fan, especially the MacBook Airs, and I have a 13-inch Air M2, and I kind of want the 15 now when I see how much more battery you're getting out of it, the screen real estate, and the fact that it's still light and thin and feature complete, and it's more affordable now. They've dropped the prices on the 13, and the 15 is good.
What I'm going to say is, and this is probably the single point of like, oh, for me, the 13 is fabulous and I use it daily, like multi hours a day. It's my, aside from my Mac Studio, and I have an MVP 14 that I use purely for video when I'm on the go. Yeah. But really it's the MacBook Air. But the notch, and this is where the 15 is genius, the notch on the Air means that there's just not enough real estate in that menu bar.
Right.
The 15 feels like, now I can work with this. And it is the subtlest, like I've always found the 13 to be just too cramped. And the 15's like, now I can work with this on the go. Yeah. Now I can run 2, or in my case, 4 windows in the corners. And it feels like there's enough space, especially when you start to scale the display, etc. So,
yeah, no, I think this is possibly the best laptop on the market today, period. For the money.
Given the 13 was the best, this is the best.
Correct. This is where we're at. And, you know, for those of you out there, it's like PC people are going, yeah, rolling your eyes going, yeah, you Mac people are like taking the Kool-Aid. No, like, seriously, look, I
have a Lenovo Yoga 9i
I was just going to mention that one. I have the Lenovo Yoga Book, the one that folds, the 2 displays, right? 9i.
Yeah, same.
It's amazing. It is the most incredible PC Windows I've used ever. And it's still not as good as the MacBook Air 15 because I cannot explain to you how much more significant the M chips are. On that Intel thing, I run out of battery after a normal days of use or halfway through the day sometime.
It lasted 4 hours for me during WWDC.
Yes, with my 13-inch MacBook Air, I don't even run out of power after an entire day's of work. I can't imagine what the 15 is going to be like. It's going to be 2-day battery life, like I swear. Like once you experience the amount of power and efficiency and battery life of an M chip, you don't want to go back. This is the Achilles heel of Windows right now. It's not the OS. It's the fact that, you know, there's x86 in here. We need Qualcomm or MediaTek and Microsoft to get together and get serious about Windows on ARM.
I'm going to echo what you just said. Once you go Apple Silicon Mac, you will not go back.
Like, it is a game changer. And for those of you who think like I'm a Mac user, so I'm all like ecosystem. No, unlike Norav, I don't have anything in iCloud. I don't even use any of the features. I don't have an iPhone. Oh, I do, but I don't really use it. I don't really care. I use this essentially as a standalone computer. I have, you know, I don't even use like Safari. I don't use any of the things that comes. The only thing I use that comes with it that's an Apple thing is Final Cut Pro and iMovie. iMovie comes with it. Final Cut I bought. But that's the only thing that's got me in the ecosystem. Everything else I do on that Mac, I can do on a PC. And yet my Mac does it a million times better. Like a million times better for the same price. That's it. That's basically all. So if you're looking for a new PC laptop that's got a big screen and super light and super long battery life, super thin, sexy, will last you years because they're really reliable. Just do yourself a favor. Don't even look at Windows. Just go nuts. That's basically all I'm going to say about that. All right. Phone 2 from nothing. There are some more rumors. Well, I think it's not a rumor anymore. It's actually revealed a date. So it's coming on July 11th. Are you excited about this phone? I am kind of excited about this phone.
Yes. I've had a few different chats with them over the year. I know Carl fairly well,
Yeah, me too.
and I think it's going to be fun. I think
it's going to be great. I love the Phone 1.
It's going to be really interesting.
And if this is better specs than the Phone 1, which I think it does, and the software is improved, which it has because the Phone 1 is getting the Phone 2 software very soon, I think this thing is going to be great. And for us in North America here, we're finally getting an official version that runs and is supported. It'll be interesting to see what partners they get in terms of carriers. What do you think? T-Mo? Yeah.
I feel T-Mo and Fi maybe.
Oh, Fi would be, oh yeah.
Or they don't go carrier at all.
Yeah, but that's a very big risk, to be honest with you, because I feel like if this thing is on the front of the store, like with the glyphs going off, some people are going to pay attention. It's the same as the Razr, right? You see it and you go like, wait a minute, what is this, right? Like it immediately gets your attention.
I guess it does have this spectacle that makes it very retail friendly. But the real question is,
it looks like an iPhone too, right? Like the dual cameras and stuff.
Can their bill of material cost actually support this? Can it support the carrier, the carrier involvement, how will that impact software and all of that stuff? You get one real chance if you're a new brand to impress on the carriers. And for me, it just comes down to them making a decision, Carl making a decision. Is it this year? Is it next year that we double, triple, quadruple down? I could be completely wrong, but I have a sense that if they were going US carrier launch, it would not be, hey, join us online at 1600 BST.
Right, you're right.
They would do a physical event here. So now they only started, and I had this from all of them, like from different people, like they only really started doing US PR this year at all. Like we know them, that's different. But having a more formalized, structured PR and marketing efforts in the US only is really begun this year. My strong suspicion that even if it's carrier, it's going to be very much dip a toe in the water. It'll be supported, but not officially. And next year, Phone 3 or something else will be when they go, oh, we have the Best Buys of the world. We can now go after the US market in a heavy way.
Yeah. Look, I'm just optimistic. The reason that I'd like to see it on T-Mobile is simply to give them more visibility. And I understand the challenges. Everything you're saying is 100% correct. But hear me out for a second, right? What if, first of all, they partner with a carrier that's like, amicable to their cause, right? But what if, Kyle, right? Kyle is kind of like Steve Jobs. Like reality distortion field, he talks to you and you're like, oh my God, this guy
I have never heard a better way to describe.
Right? He's super calm and gentle and soft-spoken, and then he reels you right in there. And look, what if he manages to get T-Mobile on board, but it's like Apple. They can't put their own software on there. It comes like with options to install like my T-Mobile and stuff I'd set up, but you can say no to it. It's not baked in the firmware. It has like the Samsung phones that have and the iPhones that have carrier specific bundles to optimize the radio for each carrier. It has one of those. And then it doesn't come with bloatware and it gets updated not through the carrier. It gets updated through nothing. What if that's the case?
I gotta be honest.
Because they're a small enough batch, I could see the carriers going for it, saying, we don't want to support another phone, you do it.
Short of the economics being like, the bomb and all of that, suddenly being like, oh wow, we have a lot of room here, which I highly doubt from everything I've been told that's the case. Like I have a strong suspicion they'll be butting towards like, oh wow, this is difficult to make, that needs unit economics.
Yeah, if they want to keep the price down, this is definitely economically, you're right.
There is a zero. I honestly believe there is no chance in hell that happens. Simply because Apple, remember Samsung. Yeah. Samsung didn't have this power.
Yeah.
Apple did because it owns the friggin' ecosystem.
But look, Samsung got that power eventually, right?
It got that power eventually. Nothing. Now, it'd be different if Carl had just come from Samsung and had been the lead person who blew up Samsung in the US. He would have power, and cachet. And he does amongst us, but I can almost guarantee that average like carrier networks are like, that's fine. What's in it for us?
Yeah.
Because there's not enough of nothing will get there, but it's not a Samsung of the world.
It's because it's nothing.
And that's the end of that, people.
And that's that.
That was fabulous.
There's another phone I want to talk to you folks about really quick because it's kind of interesting. It is this Infinix phone that just came out. Infinix Note 30 VIP. I've got it right here. So this should tell you everything you need to know, that I'm more excited to show you this very, very shiny Infinix phone than the OnePlus.
This does look interesting.
It does look. So let me read the specs because this is where it's interesting. I want you to guess the price. Okay, don't look because maybe you've already looked and you know and you're going to cheat. But okay, here are the specs. Dimensity 8050, like, you know, they've rebranded their products. So this is essentially a Dimensity 1300 from before. 6 nanometer, good chip, mid-range chip. 256 gigs of storage, 12 gigs of RAM, micro SD support, AMOLED, 6.67 inches. It's got 120 hertz refresh. It's 1080p. It's got equal bezels all the way around. Looks very sexy. 108 megapixel camera, no OIS. Then two megapixel sticker cams. It has a 5,000 milliamp hour battery with 68 watt charging and 50 watt wireless charging. And that's what this phone is about. So in a way, it's kind of got some very interesting things in here, like the MediaTek chip, the OLED display, the battery and the wireless charging. All these are things that are strong. The storage and RAM, pretty nice. Headphone jack, by the way, as well. And stereo speakers, tuned by JBL, the stereo speakers. But the thing that lets it down is that 108 megapixel camera is the only significant camera on there, kind of like the OnePlus. But it's, you know, no OIS. It's going to be tricky. But let me show you really quickly here for those of you on Patreon, because look at the bezels on this thing. Look at how even they are all the way around. Like even the bottom doesn't have a chin.
So I did look up the price because I was.
So now you know the
So,
price. So what do you think? Isn't that crazy or what?
well, it's bonkers. And the best way I would put it to everyone listening, would you rather have all the specs we just said or a OnePlus Nord N30 5G?
Exactly.
At the same price.
Granted, this thing does probably not support 5G in the US. I have to check it. I just haven't set it up, as you can see from the thing. I just got it yesterday. So 280 euros, that's about what, 310, 320 US dollars? So it's about the same price as the OnePlus.
Yeah, I just peg it at 300-ish.
Yeah. So look, not bad, especially like they send it with, it comes with a wireless stand, like, you know, in the box. So you get that. 50 watt wireless
And it's a
stand.
10-bit AMOLED display.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's solid. The only thing I said is you look at the cameras and you're like, yeah, the two sticker cams, the 2 megapixel ones, they're completely useless, despite the fact that this has a lot of holes in the back. It is definitely not, you know, it has 108 megapixel, but who knows how good it is because they have no OIS. They have no specs on it. I have no idea like the f-stop or anything like that. But look, Infinix and its sister company Techno, who did a really cool folding phone that we all played with at MWC, is an interesting up and coming company, and they kind of own Africa and like Middle East and India. They're very strong in some of these markets, Latin America as well. So I think it's kind of interesting because I just love this is the thing people like, you know.
I was trying to see if I could find my Techno. It's there on the other side of the room.
I think a lot of people are like, why do you care? But I'm like, because like, this is interesting to me. Like, I like to see what's going on in other parts of the world, other markets that are not meant for me. So I can see and take the temperature and kind of see what's going on. Similar to this, there's another phone out there that Techno makes. It's called the Techno Camon 20 Premier 5G. And that thing has got this. It's got in-body stabilization. It's got sensor shift OIS on it for $450.
They really need to fix their naming, but that sounds bloody fantastic.
The name is terrible. And these are sister companies. You can tell because I got both phones. I think the other one's in a drawer. The display is identical. Exactly the same display. The chipset's identical. Like there's definitely some part spinning going on here. But the bottom line is this is a camera-centric phone, the other one, the Techno. And Like, who else has in-body stabilization? Sensor shift. Only Apple's doing it. Oppo did it with the Find X5 Pro last year, but only on the Qualcomm version. And so really there's nobody, unless you count the Vivo gimbal that they did. That was technically in-body stabilization, but it's overkill because it's a gimbal, right? So, interesting. Of course, this is not, something that you're going to buy here in North America. But for those of you out there in Africa or in the Middle East or in Latin America or in India or whatever, this, I think, is going to be an interesting phone to check out. So I had to mention it because I'm like, wow, the price.
No, I think it's a good one to mention.
Yeah. The last bit of news that's really kind of important here for you Pixel nerds out there is we finally have camera sensor specs for the Pixel 8 series. That's both the 8 Pro and the regular 8. And it's a bit of a doozy, actually. Look at that. We're getting a GN2, the upgrade to the GN1 that's currently on the Pixel 7 series. For the main sensor, 50 megapixels. This is a really good sensor, very sensitive in low light. So it should be interesting. And we're getting a 64 megapixel ultra-wide Sony IMX787. I'm actually surprised we're getting a Sony sensor on a phone that's primarily made of Samsung parts. But here it is. This is only on the Pro, by the way. So the Pro is going to get a 64 megapixel ultra-wide. The 8 non-Pro is going to get the same IMX386 12 megapixel ultra-wide as before. And then the telephoto is a Samsung GM5 on the 8 Pro. That's 48 megapixel. I think that's exactly the same setup as what we have now. So what's your thoughts?
Gonna be interesting. I mean, the 5x optical zoom, good.
Right.
GN2 will be really interesting.
I think it's going to improve a little bit.
That 64 megapixel ultra wide will probably be binned down to 16.
Correct.
At quad binning.
Yeah.
So again, that would probably put it at about, I don't know what the sensor size, but that's probably gonna drop the micron. Like that's gonna increase the boost to microns to like 1.6, 1.7 size, something like that. So it should be good. It should be really good.
Yeah. I'm excited about this.
Yeah, it seems like this is ticking a lot of the boxes, and it'll be really interesting to see what happens. Kind of like I'm really interested in the thermometer sensor. That's unique and different. We've seen it before on I think the Note 10.
Yeah,
but it'll be interesting to see how Google decides to use that.
I think they might use it for, like you want to take the temperature of your kid or something. Kind of like when you have a handheld laser thermometer or something like that. It'd be cool to try that out. It's interesting. I know a lot of you are photo nerds like me, and a lot of you are Pixel users listening. So I'm like, this is important. You need to know this. The last thing there's a final last thing I want to just briefly touch on because we have to wrap up soon. But I want your thoughts on this. The EU is pushing some legislation forward to make batteries in phones easily replaceable. It doesn't mean that they have to be swappable like in the old days where you peel the back off, that you need. But they want very simple or few tools or no tools to be able to do this. And this could change the way our phones are made because right now, we have essentially it's called a structural battery. And this is a big deal. The reason our phones are so thin and light overall is because, and this is what I told people back in the day when they're like, why have they removed the nice replaceable batteries from my phone? I'm like, because it's actually a better thing. Because you no longer have connectors like pins that could corrode, because the connectors are either soldered on or generally just like these high quality sealed connectors. So, and they don't get swapped all the time because you're not swapping batteries. So the connectors can be more reliable. So it's less corrosion issues. But on top of that, the battery is glued in and is essentially part of the structure of the phone. When you kind of flex and bend your phone, like Zach likes to do on JRig everything, you're actually, the battery is part of the strength of the phone. So having a battery that's no longer glued in, which is what this thing proposes, means that there's basically this empty space in the middle of the phone and the battery just sitting there. Maybe it's screwed in. That might help because that's structural. But it means that especially Apple is going to have to engineer their phones very differently than they do today. If that goes...
So put it this way, the EU focusing on USB-C, amazing decision.
I agree.
the EU focusing on easily replaceable smartphone batteries, a whole lot of nonsense.
I agree. I was going to say BS.
Is based in zero sense of science, and it's what I would call a huge amount of grandstanding BS.
I agree. This is not
my
realistic.
one point here, and this applies to every country around the world. It applies to the FTC and everybody. If you're gonna get in the way of technology, please make sure there's a benefit to it.
Right.
Don't just come up with new regulation as a not only attempt to grandstand, but also to flex your own muscles.
Yeah.
Because you're really like, I don't see how many people give a damn about accessing their batteries. No, they take them in to fix it. The other side of it is right now, since if you think back to, and here's the key thing I think the EU needs to pay attention to. You think back to phones with removable batteries. A lot more batteries had space to expand, had just reliability issues.
What about waterproofing? How hard is that to do?
Yep.
Glue
Now you think
works
about
because
this.
It's a good seal for waterproofing, guys.
You think about this as well. Well, Miriam, think about this. Like, you go back to a world where it's not complete, where there's space around it and it's structural. You're giving the battery space to expand. You're giving the battery, I think you're actually detracting away from the durability of a phone.
That's what I'm saying.
And then waterproofing, exactly.
And the premiumness of the phone, the fact that it feels such a, Apple showed us with the iPhone 4, which was really the first one, how to make a phone that looks like jewelry. And look, Samsung's mastered that now. I mean, years ago now, right? The Galaxy S6 was the first to really master that. And like, my point is, everyone's
even the
on board.
Razr.
Like, you look
and
at
some of the Oppos, like, they look great. They look like works of art. And
like the latest Moto Edge Plus review, that thing is a beautifully premiumly finished phone. It feels so amazing in hand. Every seam is perfect. There is you cannot do that without glue and structural battery pack. It's just not possible. So this is just a load of BS, in my opinion. I really think that they're overreaching here, right?
Agreed.
Yeah.
All right.
On that note, let's wrap up. Do you want to tell folks where they can find you on the internet? Nirav, where are you in social and everywhere?
I'm kind of all over the place, people, but head over to theshortcut.com where you'll find me do some writing. Follow me on Twitter at Nirav, at Instagram at NiravG, and my social video brand is Everyday Tech. So that's EVRYDAY_tech. There is a very cool video I'm working on, and it involves the tech I used after a heart attack at 33. This is one that I've been working on for 3 years, and it's one that's coming soon and you definitely don't want to miss.
Definitely. You should absolutely check out Nirav's stuff on social and at The Shortcut. And of course, Everyday Tech. Definitely Everyday Tech. You're trying to build that brand. So people, please subscribe and all that good stuff.
Thank you, folks.
Absolutely. And folks, you know where to find me on the internet. I'm at Tankgirl. That's TNKGRL. It's like Tankgirl, the comic book, but drop all the vowels. That's how you'll remember. It's that handle on Twitter, on Blue Sky, on Instagram. And you can definitely chat with me and Nirav on Blue Sky and on Twitter and on Instagram. But I think, if you want to comment specifically on the podcast, do it on Twitter because I think we're more active there still. Instagram is where you'll find some pretty pictures of phones and cars and travel and food taken with phones. That's the whole point for me. And of course, the podcast lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on all the big podcast platforms, so tell your friends and subscribe. Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Spotify, everywhere. So also, if your app lets you rate or review the show, please consider doing that. That would be pretty awesome. And then finally, I want to talk about Patreon because I mentioned it a few times on the podcast. There is, yes, a video version of this podcast. You can watch us on video. You can watch us show the phones and stuff, but that's a Patreon exclusive. It's one of the tiers. So if you want to support me, Patreon is the way to do that. Patreon.com/Tankgirl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. So please consider helping me out.
You should definitely subscribe.
Yes, thanks, Nirav. And then, folks, if you also want to use another way to support me, like you don't like Patreon or something, there's a PayPal link in the show notes. Just click on the link, make a donation, buy me a $5 coffee. And also, I didn't mention, but there's a YouTube channel. So if you want to watch videos, but are not the podcast, they're just like unboxings and hands-ons and stuff, there's a channel for that, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast naturally. So you know how YouTube works. Like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment. You can comment about the podcast as well. I don't mind. And finally, I want to thank our sponsor, Mint Mobile. You know I review a lot of phones, so I'm constantly juggling multiple devices. While that's fun, it also means I'm spending a lot of money for wireless service on multiple SIMs. Thankfully, there's Mint Mobile, and that's who I'm teaming up with for today's podcast. If you want to save money on your wireless service, switch to Mint Mobile. You've probably seen the Mint Mobile ads featuring Ryan Reynolds, but let me quickly tell you how fantastic their service is, especially for tech-savvy early adopters like us. Mint Mobile offers premium wireless for as low as $15 a month, and you don't have to sacrifice any coverage, speed, or data. They're built on the nation's largest 5G network. They keep costs low because they sell direct to you online. They cut out the retail stores and salespeople. Why should you pay more than you have to for access to the same network? In my experience testing phones, Mint Mobile delivers the same data speeds and call quality as the big three for a fraction of the cost. Switching to Mint is super easy. Thanks to their eSIMs, you can sign up and activate immediately right on your phone from the comfort of your home. No more standing around waiting in line at a big wireless store. You can keep your current devices and phone number and easily switch services. And if your phone isn't eSIM compatible, Mint will ship you a new SIM card free of charge. The whole process only takes 15 minutes, and if you get stuck, Mint has a great customer service team to get you through it. All Mint Mobile plans include unlimited nationwide talk and text, plus lightning-fast 5G and free mobile hotspot. Mint will show you how much data you use each month and recommend plans that save you money. Mint also offers a modern family plan that lets you set up a super affordable family plan with as little as 2 lines. Use my link, mintmobile.com/mobiletech, to get premium wireless starting at $15 a month. Stop paying more than you need on your wireless bill and start saving big with Mint Mobile. And I want to thank you, Nirav, for being my guest this week yet again. Thanks so much for being on the show.
Thank you so much for having me. This was fun. We need to talk more about foldables. It's fun.
I'm really glad we nerded out about the Razr as much as we did, and flip phones in general. So, folks, we'll have another show next week. I will have Nirav on at some point in the future, so stay tuned for all that. And until then, cheers, everybody.
Bye.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.